everyone. I'm going to sit here and talk about Buried Deep in Other Stories by Naomi Novik. This collection of shorts. I can say that for the most part, each story in this collection stands on its own. Like, for example, the very first short story in it is actually part of a much larger body of work, but I found it ironic that the only thing I read of hers outside of this is Sholomance. And when I read the short story that pertains to that in this, I thought to myself, had I never read Sholomance, I think there's a cameo in it and the monsters in it. I think you'd have been left a little flat because it's like, well, who's this guy? What's he doing in there for? I mean, it's just like he's stuck in there in the story. The story itself is, the title of it is After Hours. And so in the Sholomance, this deadly school, it is infested with these little monsters that like to eat magic. And it's a wizard school. And there's this one dude, Orion, who has some resistance to their chomping and chewing, and he's able to actually do battle with them. He is not the lead character, though. But in this story, a witch comes to the Sholomance, and she has a roommate from hell, and they have an encounter with the things outside their dorm room, because at night they like to come a-crawling. And, this guy Orion, he's the guy who can fight them. He has a cameo here, and it wouldn't have, I would have wondered, I think, I don't get, it kind of would have not hit so hard had I not already read Sholomance. So you can certainly read the others without having to read this, but I think the one doesn't quite work as well unless you just happen to have read that first. Each story does indeed, I think, have its own voice. That hurt a little bit in one of them because there is a book, a story here that is basically Pride and Prejudice with a Dragon. And when I started to read that particular story, it just wasn't me. I don't do some of this old literature, Dickens and all that. I've just never indulged. Maybe I've read little passages here and it's like, this is just not for me. So I didn't finish that one. But a lot of these, I can almost make the argument that some of these stories, the way they're written, almost feel like they can have been written by a different person each time. So it seems to me that Naomi Novik is able to adapt to the story she's creating. I will say too, though, she's really good about most of the stories here in Sholomance. The leads are women, and I think she writes them so very well. If you'll take my perspective from a dude on that matter. One story here does not have a woman as the lead, and that is a story called Vicky. That's spelled F-I-C-I, and Vicky is a dragon. She is a female dragon. But the lead of the story is Mark Antony, as in Mark Antony and Cleopatra. And I didn't know this. She introduces it this way, and she writes it this way, that apparently Mark Antony, he was a wild dude. I never heard about any of that from him. Gambler, whoremonger, and drunken bastard con man, really. I mean, he cons his way up the ranks of society. And in here, he gets that more from the fact that he gets his hands on a dragon egg than anything else. And I did not know that, but that's the only story in here where a dude leads the way. It didn't take long. First story and last story, I'm guessing Naomi has some kind of desire about sailing. The first story is called Araminta, or The Wreck of the Amphidrake. And this is a woman on a pirate ship, and the pirate ship is led by a man until they are shipwrecked, and she makes an offering to a goddess in a temple, and she becomes the pirate queen. The last story, The Long Way Around, this one features, this one is apparently going to potentially become a full-length novel, although she does, the way she introduces this, she says this might not quite come out the same way as the short story. And this one is called, it's called A Long Way Around, but I think she says the project is simply called Folly, under a name for now. Brother and sister, teenagers, just sailing gurus. He is a good builder, she is a great navigator, and they're going to go into what's called the Big Empty, was basically just a very large ocean. And at the behest of what's called a High Lord, it almost feels like she could have completely left magic out of it, because the sailing portions of this are actually really interesting. But turns out the High Lords, they run things by what seems like it's supposed to be, let's say, low magic, but their magic, it affects the mind. So they can make you, for example, think you're eating one thing and you're eating a bunch of dirt. They can control people that way. They're in control that way. 36 of them, I think, is mentioned in here. But he pays them to build a vessel, and they're going to go, and his real mission, he wants to try to find magic that is better, that can become reality instead of just something in people's mind. The ship they build is a rather large catamaran. They go across the ocean, all the stuff for supplies and getting the crew and getting over there, and what they discover. And they start butting heads the way I would think. I think that the High Lord that goes with them is not particularly evil, but he is basically an oligarch, and he sees the potential to use magic in a whole different way. Whereas the girl here, Tess, she's like, look, dude, this is not what you should be using this for. For example, the civilization here, it's not that they, built this structure and they used magic to build it and make it real. The wood that we made our ship out of is rare. We had to, hire people to go find it. It's hard to find. But here, there's like 6 of them, these friggin' trees just sitting over here off this beach. And it's like they're more in tune with their environment, and that's where the real magic lies. So we're going to have, I guess you could say, oligarchs butting heads with environmentalists if it comes up in a larger book. Another one that stood out was called Spinning Silver. And this is a decent one. I've never been more interested in money lending than when I read this short story in here. And this fellow, he's a money lender, but he's not very good at it. People owe him money, but he lets him slide. He's just way too kind. Well, the daughter's looking around, is like, our house is falling apart, our family is starving, I'm going to do something about this. And she goes out, and she goes out to each one of these people that owes her father a debt. She's like, you're going to pay. And they're like, what are you talking about? We don't owe you anything. We're not going to pay you. Haha, what are you going to do about it? And she puts her foot down and says, well, I can just go bring the law into this. You owe, you're going to pay, and you're going to pay now. And if you can't pay all of it now, you're going to pay some of it now and pay more of it later with more and more interest. And begrudgingly, they start paying her. And, oh, look, her family's no longer starving, and now they're living in a new house, and so on. This, however, catches the attention of an elven lord who comes to her with a little bit of silver and says, I want this turned to gold. And through her money lending, she's able to do that. But then the stakes go up, not just for the coin, but potentially what could happen to her life as she has to deal with her situation with this elven lord. Just good all around storytelling right here. She's a very good writer. I think her stories and the inner thoughts of the characters are nice and full. It's all well developed. And so I've only read the one thing. This is the second thing now I've read from her, and so I'm becoming a fan. So whenever she comes out with this whatever this next project is going to be, Folly, I'm probably going to jump on that sucker. There's no day I look for some kind of like a to be published list to see what she's doing next as it pertains to that, and there isn't anything listed. So for the time being, it's just some things she's working on that she hasn't put even a preliminary date of publishing out yet. So we'll see what happens. So next, Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Like that cover there. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful, kind princess and her wicked maid. One day, the wicked maid stole the princess's face and with it her name, her betrothed, everything. The princess had to toil away as a servant, while her maid lived like a queen. When the maid was caught, she died for her crimes, and the princess lived happily ever after. Or that is how the story has been told. Now it's time for the wicked maid to tell her side of the story. So I can't remember how many weeks ago that hit me when I picked it up, but I was like, oh, well, you got me. The only thing is, I was kind of hoping for a one-shot there, but apparently there is a sequel called Painted Devils, so we'll see. I do hope this stands on its own. If it's so good I can't resist, I'll then get to the next one, but I already have my eye on the next book and what comes after that. Part of a series too, but again, kind of hoping for some single shots here as I move along. So there's Buried Deep, real good short story collection. That's what I'm reading next. Here's Sholomance, the first book in Sholomance. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend that too. There you go. See you in a week. See you in a week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.